Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are and what part of the world you are in. Welcome to the OSG Lunch and Learn webinar on the topic of Can NPS surveys be made actionable? My name is Sukumar, and I am the President CEO for OSG Analytics, a company that focuses very heavily in understanding what the future expectations of customers are and how to change customer behavior. Many of our technology solutions are driven to help drive actionable growth for our clients. My background, I spent 25 years in academia teaching marketing and analytics across a number of universities after my PhD, MBA and PhD in marketing and statistics. Prior to my doctoral degree, I was a mechanical engineer and also obtained a degree in industrial engineering. Today for our webinar, I'm excited to talk a little bit about the NPS measure, something that has become synonymous with customer experience and how to measure customer experience. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about how companies are measuring the Net Promoter Score and how they're using it, concerns and areas of issues they face. And we will come back and talk about how some of the approaches that we take can help you address the gaps that exist in the Net Promoter Score and help you drive actionable growth in a very effective manner. We'll end the discussions today with your questions and answers and answers to some of your questions. We welcome you to key in your questions along the way in the chat box on the right side. A little bit about OSG. It's a global company with offices in a number of parts of the world, including Latin America, the US, in Europe, and in Asia Pacific. We have a great team of executives and associates who have been actively involved in a number of different industry verticals, including pharma, retail, consumer packaged goods, financial services, and in the energy sector. In many of these industries, our associates and experts have worked across a number of different topics and have leveraged our technology solutions in order to drive actionable growth for our clients. Our focus has been in bringing together both cognitive and behavioral analytics. Cognitive analytics is all about understanding and interpreting the data, the voice, the words that our consumers and our customers leave today in various kinds of forums. And that ability to understand and interpret that data as time moves, but also to bring together a behavioral set of metrics on what customers have done in the past and what their expectations might be in the future, makes us one of the unique companies that brings both of these different streams of data to drive actionable growth. Let me start off with talking about the Net Promoter Score. This measure was brought by two gentlemen from the consulting firm Bain & Company, Fred Reichel and his associate, made the Net Promoter Score a very popular measure. And today it has become very synonymous with the notion of customer experience. Let's first and foremost make sure that we all understand and define this measure very clearly. So if you happen to be in the industry of automotive service, this question may take the simple form of how likely is it that you would recommend us as a provider of oil change to your friends and family. You could replace oil change with any other product or service, and you could drop off the words friends and family and focus only on how likely would you be to recommend us to others for a particular product, service, or solution. The question is typically asked on a 10-point scale, and the authors initially felt that a 10-point scale would give a lot of variability, though many debate the need for a 10-point scale without having specific markings on each point creates variability, but also creates interpretation issues as such. When respondents answer the question, they answer it as 0, not at all likely, or some number between 0 and 10, where 10 is extremely likely, and the number 5 is neutral. When the results are collected, when the data is collected, the scores are then computed. The percentage of respondents who give a 9 or a 10 are labeled as the promoters. You see them in the green picture out here. And the percentage of um, respondents who took the survey, who gave it a 0 to a 6, are often referred to as the detractors. The net promoter score is the difference between the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. Now, this score has been used since the book, The Loyalty Effect, was written. And the company, the founders, the executives who wrote this also started a consulting company driven specifically to help companies interpret this score and understand it better. Many companies have begun to use NPS in many different ways. For example, they collect NPS about a specific product. They collect NPS about a brand. They collect NPS about the overall customer experience, and they do it in different ways, sometimes at a single transaction, at other times on a monthly or a quarterly basis, with other questions related to customer satisfaction embedded in them. Very often the question becomes, so what? What do I do with this metric? And we know that, and having worked with a number of different clients, we see that senior executives love the NPS score because it is a single measure, a single metric that they can track, they can look at over time. It's easy to understand. And they have the ability to look at and say, has this metric grown? Has this metric increased or improved? And the feeling, it's really more a perception of the feeling that this has led to increased growth, begins to fall, begins to give a comfort feeling for senior executives as they look at this number. However, very often we also hear the other side of measuring the NPS in this fashion. And our clients have often said, we don't know what to do with this number. We don't know if we have too many passives. How do we change that? We don't know if we have a large number of detractors as compared to our competitors. Is that good? Is that bad? And there are benchmarks that are floating out there, benchmarks that cut across industries, and benchmarks that suggest that an NPS score from anywhere above a 40 seems to be a good score for companies to have. I've also seen companies design compensation packages on the NPS scores. I know, for example, a bank, a retail bank, that uses the NPS scores to reward its relationship managers. Now, this has also led to a number of biases in the way the NPS score itself has been computed. We all know that as humans, we want to see our NPS score increase, and as a result, the collection of the metric and the recording and revelation of these metrics only seem to indicate an upward trend because compensations and bonuses and commissions are based on that. So the biggest concern that comes up with the use of the NPS scores is its low actionability. The low actionability comes from the fact that we do not know what to improve. We do not know at what touch point with the customer should certain improvements be made. And then more importantly, we see cultural biases seem to impact the notion of which customer happens to be a passive customer or a promoter. So it becomes extremely important as a result to not only go beyond what is the score, who gave it the score, is it a passive or a detractor or a promoter, to also understand why and to understand what do you need to do in order to bring growth and in order to bring improvements. As I talked earlier when I introduced OSG as a company, the focus of everything we do is to really uncover both the how and the why of customers and the mental accounting that they go through in making those decisions. As we look at both their current and future needs, and as we understand them at every point in their journey of making the decisions they make, we uncover more specifically what makes the promoter a promoter, what makes the passive a passive, and then most importantly, what is it that we need to do? What actions we need to take, and how do we convert the passive to a promoter? How do we recognize that certain detractors will never be attracted to you, and making any investment in those detractors will never lead to an increase in the NPS score? So how do we do this? And what is the technology that we deploy in order to achieve a deep understanding for how and why behind the customer decision making, and then to assess how our brand or our products and solutions provide a better or inferior customer experience on certain elements that are important to our customers. This is where we use a technology. This technology is called AceMap and was developed out of Stanford University in the early 2000s. The technology was developed in order to go deep into the mind of the customer, in order to be able to understand how customers account for what drives their decisions to be interested in a particular brand or a particular solution, and before we start to understand their satisfaction or the gaps that might exist. As you know that the NPS measure is collected in a survey, so also in many surveys, we collect data using a standard approach. That standard approach is very much like the NPS question, is a straightforward question that lists out 20 or 25 different attributes that describe customer expectations. And the question that is asked is a simple question on, please rate the following on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is not at all important to you and 5 is very important to you. This standard approach of asking a question in a survey creates a lot of tension and bias, because once again, the scale is a stated scale, and very often the measures are clearly driven by culture, environment, situation, self-selection, many such factors that determine what number somebody may pick on this particular scale. In addition, we also see that this measure is not helpful for us to take individual action, to take an immediate action on a particular customer because something was important and our brand was not able to provide the right kind of experience. So the standard approach tends to be very weak and not so helpful as compared to what the AceMap approach does. In the AceMap approach, we take, again, multiple attributes that define customer experience. Customer expectations and needs, both present and future, are listed. These are accumulated through various understanding of data from cognitive sources, from sources that are unstructured. And once we have a good, thorough understanding of both current and future expectations, we use the AceMap approach inside the same survey. With AceMap, our respondents are actually playing a game. They're playing a trade-off game, but they have to decide which attribute is more important to them, and by how much more is one attribute more important to them than another. In playing this game, so as you can see here, if you took simple experience with taste versus the experience with the healthy ingredients, someone has to decide which one is more important and by how much more is one more important to the other. In this case, 66% on healthy ingredients, 33% on good taste. So multiple such trade-offs are played in the game in order for us to uncover what is specifically important to an individual respondent completing an NPS survey. And once that is done, we immediately pipe out and indicate the top 3 or top 5 things that are most important to an individual and measure their experiences only on those elements. This drives considerable actionability in the data, and we'll take you through some examples of the analytics that comes out of this whole exercise. AceMap is a very simple way of understanding such mental accounting, and as you can see, we clearly do 3 simple steps. A list of 30 or 35 attributes are shown to a respondent, and then they're asked to sort them into 2 simple buckets of which attributes are more important to them and which attributes are less important to them. Once they do that, they do step 2, which is to rank order these attributes from the most important to the least important in driving behavioral change. And finally, we ask them to do the pairwise trade-offs that I just talked about. It's a very simple to take exercise. It's very powerful. It forces the respondent to mentally account for what matters to them. We are also in a position to ensure that the respondent is fully engaged in this game or in the AceMap survey itself. The exercise is very engaging. It tests a large number of current and future need statements. It's easy to use, and we see that it is fairly quick to take, while at the same time allowing us to understand what is going on in the mind of the customer. It is real time and it is very personalized, so we have a good, deep understanding of what's in the mind of the customer. What does this data do for us? As we collect this data and we start to analyze, it doesn't take us very much of a long time to begin to analyze the data and separate that information between what is important, what matters to promoters, and how is it different than that for passives. So here we are taking a very traditional NPS approach to understand how we categorize our customers into promoters, passives, and detractors. But then we are also understanding what drives our customer expectation, what drives the reputation, what is important to customers. And by looking at this data and by looking at how it is different by each different group, we are now in a position to bring the two of these metrics together to understand the gaps and to understand how our brand is doing a good or a better job on certain areas and how it is weak in other areas, allowing us to drive actionability, allowing us to take a very quick action for how we might be able to improve customer experience on an ongoing basis. Let me show you some examples of results that typically get captured in these surveys. The surveys don't have to be very long. They can be very simple and to the point. One example would be to assess at what stage in the purchase funnel has a customer been intercepted to complete the survey. So we have a good sense for the awareness, the size of the customer base on how many are aware, how many have considered, how many have tried the brand, and so on, while at the same time looking at a trend of all of these numbers and metrics over time and understanding in this lower Southwest bucket if there is a highly competitive marketplace, beginning to understand how our NPS scores are different than the competition, how our size of promoters are different than that of the competition, recognizing how many passives we may have who have tried our product and who are not likely to give it a very strong rating or a very strong thumbs up, recognizing that this group needs to be understood better and more actionable actions to be taken based on an understanding of this particular group. Once we do that, we can start to understand specifically where the gap is and at what stage. So looking at the Southwest bucket here, at what stage are the gaps and how do we begin to address the gaps? Let me show you a simple example of how the ACE map drivers begin to help us understand customer expectations. Right here on the left side on slide 13, you can see a number of attributes. This list is just an example. It's a list in a pharmaceutical company, but the same list exists for retail, for financial services, for telecommunications companies, and so on. The list can be very big. The more crowded the market is, the larger the customer expectations. And our ability then to understand how customers individually and in a group begin to prioritize these particular needs as to how important they are in being able to drive their interest excuse me, in a particular brand or in a particular customer experience begins to allow us a good thorough understanding for what is happening to the product and what is happening to the customer base. Simultaneously, we have a good sense of a report card on the right side, which allows us to look at on these very dimensions that are important to customers, knowing the hierarchy, how does our brand and the competition's brand stack, and where are the gaps, and how do we start to think about where to fix it and how to improve. And my next slide is a very interesting chart, a little complicated, but I'll take the time to help explain because it starts to bring three different dimensions for us that allows even further actionability in the results that come out of an NPS survey. On the vertical axis, you can see that we map how important an attribute is in driving customer expectations and driving customer behavior and driving customer engagement. On the horizontal axis, we begin to capture how satisfied the customers are or how much the need is met or not met. So high customer satisfaction on the right side would suggest the need is met. Low satisfaction would mean that these needs are not met very well. The dots represent where our brand, our clients' brands are spotted. on this map, and then specifically the size of the dots and the color in red or green indicate how well my brand is as compared to the competition. If I have a green dot, I'm better than the competition. If I have a red dot, I'm worse off than the competition. If I have a green dot and the dot is really big, that means I have a huge advantage over the competition. So let's just simply look at this one quadrant, the northwest quadrant, where these are drivers that are very important, and customers in general seem to have an unmet need, or they're not very satisfied with too many of the companies that are offering this particular customer experience measurement. The elements in this box are important, and they're not fully addressed, would suggest the need to improve on these elements of customer experience, would suggest that this green dot needs to become even greener, even bigger, and that this red dot here is suggestive of clearly one where competition has a marginal edge, but you as the main brand can certainly help with improving this even further and making a difference by taking appropriate actions along the lines. The northeast quadrant out here are elements that are satisfied. Number of other competitors are doing very well on this, and they are important. And if you have red dots in here, it clearly is suggestive of the fact that you need to bring further improvements into the marketplace. You need to quickly take actions on elements where you are behind, and you need to make the necessary changes. Again, this is data from a client that is masked that allowed us to work with them very closely to begin to drive actionability, to begin to make changes in their customer experience on some of their individual products in their portfolio, leading to the necessary action that we wanted to achieve. Let me take you through a very simple case study of a national auto service retailer who, by using our methodology, by using AceMap, were quickly able to drive actionable results. When they approached us, they were doing customer experience surveys. These were satisfaction questions on a number of dimensions. There was clearly no understanding for what to do with the NPS scores. Actionability was questionable. They worked with us initially out of their 2,000 stores to begin to do the NPS measurement, as well as, more importantly, the customer experience surveys across 270 stores, the initial pilot, using AceMap and leveraging a number of experiential dimensions on which we began to assess what was important using the AceMap technology and engaging these customers. What were their expectations? Some of them were current expectations, some of them were future expectations. The resulting approach allowed us to provide guidance at a store level, to provide guidance, to create benchmarks and metrics to see how passives were doing as compared to promoters, where the gaps were in the brand, and why people left. The company had a very high churn, 40% churn rate, and why people left and went to a competitor, and began to help us to structure various kinds of programs at each individual store to help improve training and help improve various other kinds of actionable measures at each store, so that we could see a clear improvement. The net result of all of this is where the companies where stores were declining in sales, we began to see very quickly an improvement that led to the 270 stores seeing a $100 million increase in revenue. A big learning out of all of this exercise was the fact that using AceMap, we were able to take very regional actions, actions at an individual store level. We were able to provide guidance on the size of the detractors and the size of the passives for each store and region, and compare it across franchisees in the enterprise. Sorry, and we were able to build and develop programs that would help drive customer experience improvement across the entire system. Today, we see that the company has leveraged our approach and our system on a continuous basis, and are also using this across all of their 2,000 stores, leading to great improvements in finding the ability to launch new products and new services that came out of these results, creating store formats that are current and new because there clearly were gaps in shopper experience because of certain store formats, because of certain restrictive services that are offered in some stores and not offered in other stores, leading to some tremendous changes in store format and store outlook, leading also to new store acquisitions as well as new store layouts in other markets inside the region. Let me pause there and reiterate what I just said. We talked about the importance of NPS. We talked about companies doing NPS scores in order to understand quick and in a simple way how they're performing, and a metric that senior management understands very easily. The biggest frustration that companies have is creating actionability out of these NPS surveys so that they know how to improve shopper experience, customer experience, and how to do it on an individual basis. Most companies use the NPS score to drive commissions and bonuses for their employees, have often faced the problem of not being able to improve it from one year to another year, leading to even further biases in the particular score NPS survey. We recommend the use of AceMap, a behavioral analytics platform that allows you to understand shopper or customer expectations before you measure customer experience and figure out exactly what improvements are necessary to drive customer engagement. NPS scores can be made even more actionable. They can be made very actionable using AceMap because you can clearly understand what is important, what matters to your passives, how your brand is performing poorly with those passives, and what you need to do in order to improve those the experiences of these passives. That is the key learning here from our conversation today. And I'd like to stop and see if there are any questions from any of our audience. Again, I thank you very much for participating. I thank you for listening to this webinar, and welcome any questions you might have to this talk.
Thank you, Dr. Sukumar. We have some questions for you. What industries are best suited for understanding NPS?
Well, in my experience, I see that the NPS score can be used across many industries. However, the best suited ones are those that have very high transactions. Very high transactional industries are better suited because word of mouth plays a very important role in customers being able to describe or define how good their experiences were met, and whether their expectations were properly addressed by the product or the brand that they recently purchased.
Thank you, Dr. Sukumar. NPS questions are asked for an audience for their recommendations that could be a function of a particular person who's taking those surveys. So the question is, does this make NPS measure less precise measure of the degree of satisfaction with the service provider based on their experience, based on the experience of the person taking the surveys?
Well, it's a single question survey metric that is used. There are no multiple measurements. There may be multiple measurements across multiple survey takers or survey respondents. As a result, the 0 to 10 scale, unless you have enough sample, can experience large numbers of large amounts of error in the percentages that are computed for promoters and detractors. So one needs to be extremely careful in how the NPS survey question is asked, how big the sample is, and ensure that the biases that get caused very often by cultural differences, environmental differences, and various other situational differences need to be carefully assessed when a survey like this is conducted.
Thank you, Dr. Sukumar. When you find a particular experience element that needs to be improved upon, typically, how do we know how much to invest in each of those drivers?
Well, there are ways to understand how much to invest because clearly we understand the gap between the where we are today and where we need to get to. So the gap allows us to understand how much incremental improvement we need to make on individual attributes that make up the customer experiences and the customer needs. In addition, we can see how these correlate with transactional data from the individual shopper or customer. If we know what they have purchased in the past, we can clearly understand and measure what happens to a 1 point change in NPS, how much revenue can be achieved. When these calculations are done, and now these are very sophisticated models, and when these models are built, a good understanding for the value of improving NPS and the impact on revenue can be understood, and we can then assess what effort needs to be put in. Typically, we see that it takes between 3 to 6 months in service-oriented businesses to create new experiences, to improve experiences, and begin to see improvements in the NPS score because of making the necessary changes to shopper or customer experiences by improving these dimensions.
Thank you, Dr. Sukumar. Thank you to all of our attendees. We will we'll host the recording and a copy of the presentation on osganalytics.com in about 24 hours. Again, we welcome your questions. Dr. Sukumar's contact information is on the screen, and we look forward to having conversations with you. With that, we thank you one more time and wish you all a very good rest of the day. Thank you.